Welcome back. You're watching Money, Money, Money. And this week we are breaking down EPF, NPS and retirement funds and trying to figure out what really makes sense when you want long-term wealth creation to take care of your retirement years. So, Mr. Rustagi, I take your point on tax. It's very clear that I think NPS, the most complicated issue is what happens after the age of 62 or 63, 62 when you're retiring. 40% compulsorily has to go into annuity. And annuity is taxable. So that's indirectly that's tax you need to pay. There were some changes in the budget last year to reduce the total amount of taxation, but I think even there about only 20% is tax-free right now, if I'm not mistaken.
You're absolutely right. And as you rightly mentioned, it's very, very important that one, you should be investing in the right asset class to get good returns. At the same time, the returns have to be tax efficient, because if you were to pay tax at the time of retirement, that will eat into your, retirement pie. So I think it's very, very important to look at both the aspects. The problem with NPS is, like I said, the good thing is that at the time of investment, you get additional tax benefit of 50,000, and that attracts a lot of people to look at it. But at the time of when you withdraw your money after retirement, the problem is that you have to mandatorily buy annuity for 40% of your corpus. Now, on that, annuity comes to around 5 to 6%. That also is taxable. So clearly, I think that's a big handicap as far as NPS is concerned. 40% that you can withdraw lump sum is tax-free. The 20% you still have to pay tax. So imagine like you build a corpus for next 15, 20, 25 years and you end up paying tax on that. So there is no flexibility. 40% is locked in because of annuity. Whereas if I were to look at any other option like mutual fund that we talked about, you build a corpus and you opt for something called systematic withdrawal plan. So you don't have to worry about getting 5% or 6%, you assess your requirement.
You can decide how much you want every month.
Exactly, and you're getting
you don't have to pay tax
return.
on that.
Despite the fact that you're in a market-linked product, the volatility goes away in terms of how much you get as income on a regular basis. So I think that's a big problem with NPS there. If you look at mutual fund, for example, equity-oriented funds, you get tax-free return because you're investing for longer period. You, again, like I said, either you can set up SWP or there are different options. You can go into hybrid funds, which have the option of giving you monthly dividend in tax-efficient manner. These are funds which invest in equity, debt and arbitrage. So you can look at those. You can look at balance fund. Because even after retirement, don't forget that you still have to beat inflation.
So now I'm looking at returns. We're coming down to last thoughts and to answer the question for all our viewers. Okay, what do you do? What's the best option? So I am looking at the equity-oriented NPS plans, which is the 50% highest exposure that you can do when you are deciding your exposure to NPS. So over 5 years, about 13%, 14%. How does this compare to some of the other mutual funds where the equity exposure can be, in the range of 60-70%?
See, definitely if you were to look at diversified fund, as I mentioned, because of higher allocation, the returns are definitely better than this.
Let's talk about a balanced fund which has equity exposure as high as 60-70%.
But my guess is that for a 5-year period, I think there will be a difference around 2 to 3% annualized return. Clearly, because that goes as high as 70%. But let's not forget...
With the balance fund offering a higher return.
Exactly. But let's not forget that 5-year period for an equity-oriented fund, and if the markets have corrected the way the markets have corrected recently, can give you a completely different picture.
That's also true.
But if I were to look at balance fund and equity fund, especially the ones that have a track record of 15 years, I think the average return over that period is in excess of 20%.
Oh yeah, I can see all the calculations that Mr. Rustagi has actually done for us over here. 23% for the HDFC Prudence, you're talking about 21% for the SBI Magnum Balance Fund. So yeah, it's all in the high teens, very high teens, or touching 20%. So balanced equity-oriented balance funds, is this what gets your sort of vote of confidence?
It does.
Anything else, or is this the best perhaps instrument to be in?
It does, but I think first priority has to be to ensure that you get entire tax benefit under ATC. Once you have done that, then you have a lot of flexibility in terms of where the money has to go. But I think the attempt clearly has to be to make sure that your equity allocation has to go up because you have a long-term horizon. And let's not forget that the focus really has to be on earning positive real rate of return. And that can only come from equity. But the allocation to equity will depend clearly on at what stage you start increasing allocation to equity and where your other investments are. Now, for example, someone who's contributing to EPF, and ATC is exhausted because of that and insurance premium and housing loan or whatever, then you don't have to necessarily look at NPS or you don't have to look at retirement funds. You can go into plain diversified equity fund. You can have allocation the way you want for mid cap and small cap and large cap. There is a lot of flexibility, and as we've seen that over a 15-year period, the returns have been fantastic. On an average, if you were to look at EPF as 9%, and here you're looking at 20% plus. I mean, I think that makes a huge difference to the kind of retirement corpus that you can build for yourself.
All right, Mr. Rustagi, very, very valuable inputs and extremely critical analysis that you've done for us. All the pain that you've taken, long returns of 15 years, because retirement savings is a very, very important topic that we must keep in mind. Thanks very much for joining us today. Well, that's it on this week's episode. Your feedback, comments, queries, welcome. As always, we'll see you again next week.